right, so let's see what it would take to set this up on a PC. You're going to need a program to process the files. And so I'm going to suggest that you use this application called PrePros at this URL. And it's pretty similar to CodeKit, but there's some important differences. And the first thing we need to do is, of course, after you've downloaded and installed the application, is to run it. And when you've got it going, and when you've got it, and after you run the application, you need to add a new project. And the easiest way to do that is just to drag a folder from the desktop, and there it is. And once you get there, you're going to need to turn off the autocompile feature for all of the JavaScript files. So I'm going to turn off autocompile for each one of these. And we'll leave this less file free right now. So let's go ahead and turn all these other JavaScript files off. Right, so the next thing we need to do is change the location of where the less file the next thing we need to do is change the location of where this less file compiles to. So I'm going to right click over here and select change output. That'll allow me to look at the underscore folder and then the CSS folder. And I'm going to call this file bootstrap.css. Hit save. And I'm also going to modify how this is output. Right now it's just compiling it, but I'm going to also ask it to compress the CSS. And if you want to, you can hit the compile button. It says the compilation is successful. If you open this up in your text editor, you'll be able to see that now in the underscore folder and the CSS folder, you'll have the bootstrap.css file. And this will be all the files processed and combine into a super long single line little project there. So if we look at view and then do word wrap, you could see it all kind of in one line. All right, so that's fine for the CSS that comes from Bootstrap. We'll need to add a couple of files so that we can process our own things. So I'm going to go into components and then a less, and I'm going to create a new file here. I'll make a new file. And this is going to be saved. Now, on the Mac, you can use the underscore character at the beginning of the file name. What that does is just makes it easier to see because it puts it at the very top. However, this doesn't work on PrePros. So what you actually want to do is just call this something else, like mystyles.less. And we'll hit the save button here. And we also want to create a JavaScript document that's going to allow us to compress all of these files into a single document. Now, to do that, I'm going to go over to this just right here. Now, it's a long number, but here's all the code that you're going to need to combine all the JavaScript together. So I'm going to grab this right here and right click to copy this. Minimize this and switch over into my text editor where I'm going to create a new file here. And this will be called bootstrap.js. Again, on a Mac, I normally put the underscore at the beginning, but that's not going to work. PrePros is not going to pick it up. So I'll just call it bootstrap.js and I'll hit save. And in there, I'm going to paste my gist. And what this is doing is just asking PrePros to append or prepend every one of these JavaScript files in this order. The order is going to be important. So I'm going to save this. And I also, of course, want my own JavaScript file just in case I want to do any JavaScript that is not made by, And I also want to create another JavaScript file just in case I want to do anything outside of Bootstrap. So I'm going to right click in here, select new file, and this one's going to be called my script.js. Hit save. And there it is. And what I want to do now is notice that as soon as I saved some of the files, Bootstrap automatically created this minified version. It actually combined everything. So I need to go back in there and adjust one more thing because I don't really want this new file to be in this same JavaScript folder. So I'm going to switch back over to PrePros. And notice that all the files that I created are picked up automatically by this application. So what I want to do is change the location of this file. So I'll right click on this, select change output, and make sure that I pick the project. And this is going to go in the JavaScript folder, and it's going to be called bootstrap.js. Hit save. And now it's going to process and send it to the proper place. And of course, in here, I can also ask it to compile it, uglify it, mangle variable names. So uglify just means getting rid of all the spaces and tabs. Mangle variable names will actually take any variable names and make them even smaller by changing them very carefully. So we'll leave both of those. This one is processing well. This myscript.js also needs to be changed so that it's not outputting here. So I'll do change output. And what I want to do is go back to the underscore folder. And then this is my script JavaScript file. So it's going to go in here, the JavaScript folder. And it's going to be called myscript.js. When it's processed, hit save. And I want to make sure that, auto compile and uglify and even mangle variable names is fine. So finally, I need to change the location of my styles. And I'm going to right click in here and change the output. And again, underscore CSS. And this one will be called mystyles.css. Hit save. And this one will be auto-compiled. And I'll even hit compress CSS if you want to. That's kind of optional, but and if you want to, you can hit the compile button and it will compile these files manually for you. We can hit it a few times just to make sure. And for some reason, it looks like it picked up something new here. So bootstrap.less, mystyles.less. We got to make sure that we go in and delete some of these folders. So I don't really want this min folder in there anymore. Let me go ahead and delete this from here. And so now we have in this CSS folder, we have the bootstrap.css file, which is all the Bootstrap together, mystyles.css, which right now doesn't have anything because we haven't put any less into this mystyles.less file that's in the last folder. So mystyles.less is right here. This is fine. Okay, let's see what else. See what else we need to. I think we're pretty much done here. So just gotta make sure it's not processing anything that we don't want it to. So that one's fine. The bootstrap.less will auto compile and compress into this bootstrap.css. This one goes to bootstrap.js. myscript.js processes to JS and myscript.js, which is fine. And this one right here, we don't want to process because it's going to take the file that gets generated from the components folder, right? It gets generated into this myscript.js, and then it's going to try to process it again. So this one right here, we also want to not compile. And we don't need anything else here because that's already going to be taken care of by this one. And so this one looks good. And that's pretty much all you need. It's a little bit different, and you're going to have to get used to the fact that on a PC, at least where PrePros is concerned, it's not going to like files that have an underscore. So that's going to be something you're going to have to remember as you go through the rest of the different videos.